Question. DS. If a, b, c, and d are positive, is a to the power of -1 times b whole times c to the power of -1 times d whole greater than a to the power of -1 times c whole times b to the power of -1 times d? Condition 1. B is greater than c. Condition 2. A plus b is greater than 1. Solution. Now we will solve this DS question using the variable approach. The first step of the variable approach. The first step, and the priority, is to modify and recheck the original condition and the question to suit the type of information given in the condition. Let's apply the 3 steps suggested previously. Let's follow the first step of the variable approach by modifying and rechecking the original condition and the question. We have to find out whether a to the power of -1 times b whole times c to the power of -1 times d whole greater than a to the power of -1 times c whole times b to the power of -1 times d. If a, b, c, and d are positive. Let's modify the original condition, as this has to be our top priority. Now, as all the variables are positive, we can cross-multiply without changing the inequality sign. Modification is always the first step. The question asks us whether a to the power of -1 times b whole times c to the power of -1 times d whole greater than a to the power of -1 times c whole times b to the power of -1 times d. This can be rewritten as whether b over a times whole of d over c is greater than c over a times whole of d over b, or whether b times d over a times c whole greater than c times d over a times b. If we cross-multiply, we get b times d times whole of a times b whole greater than a times c times whole of c times d. This then simplifies to a times b squared times d whole greater than a times c squared times d. Dividing both sides by the equation by a times d, we get b squared is greater than c squared, or b squared minus c squared whole greater than 0. This can be factored using the difference of squares to get b minus c times whole of b plus c whole greater than 0. We know from original condition b plus c is always positive, since b and c are positive. So, we are looking for an answer as to whether b minus c is greater than 0. That is whether b is greater than c. Let's look at condition 1, which tells us that b is greater than c. So we get yes, and this is exactly what we were looking for. Since it is a unique answer, yes, this condition is sufficient. The advantage of the variable approach is that it helps you solve the questions rapidly and accurately. You can be an expert if you do a lot of practice. Condition 2 tells us that a plus b is greater than 1. This cannot determine uniquely whether b is greater than c, so this is not sufficient. Condition 1 alone is sufficient, so A is the correct answer. If you find that both A and C could be the answers, then A would be the answer. And similarly, if you find that both B and C could be the answer, then B would be the answer according to the definition of DS question. Answer A.